In Brazil, the word libertação is meant to sound hopeful. It translates to deliverance, a spiritual freeing from evil influence. In hundreds of Pentecostal churches across the country, deliverance rituals are performed every week without incident. But in isolated cases, when fear replaces restraint and authority goes unquestioned, libertação becomes something else entirely. For several children in Brazil, deliverance did not mean freedom. It meant death. The Maranhão case, a child marked as possessed. In 2014, in the northeastern state of Maranhão, an 8-year-old girl was brought by her family to a small evangelical church. She had nightmares. She cried during prayer. She refused to speak at times. In a region with limited access to mental health care, these signs were not treated as distress. They were treated as possession. Church leaders told the family that the child was under demonic influence and that prayer alone was no longer sufficient. According to police records, the ritual that followed involved hours of forced prayer, physical restraint, and repeated blows intended to break the demon's hold. Witnesses later testified that when the child screamed, adults were instructed to continue, because resistance was interpreted as the demon fighting back. The girl collapsed during the ritual. She never regained consciousness. The medical examiner ruled the death a homicide, citing internal injuries, dehydration, and physical trauma consistent with prolonged abuse. During questioning, adults involved showed little remorse. They insisted the intention was spiritual healing, not harm. The court later ruled that belief did not absolve responsibility. The Goiás deliverance, fasting and force. Several years later in Goiás, another child was subjected to a different but equally fatal form of deliverance. This time, the ritual focused on fasting and physical domination rather than immediate violence. The child, a young boy, was denied food and water for extended periods while adults prayed over him continuously, shouting commands for evil spirits to leave. When he became weak and disoriented, this was interpreted as progress. When he stopped responding, it was interpreted as surrender. By the time emergency services were called, the child's organs were already failing. Hospital staff later testified that the level of dehydration and exhaustion suggested days, not hours, of forced deprivation. Prosecutors described the ritual as a slow execution disguised as faith. The São Paulo case, a modern deliverance death in São Paulo, one of Brazil's most developed states. A case emerged in the early 2020s that shattered the assumption that such deaths only happen in remote regions. An 11-year-old boy was repeatedly subjected to deliverance rituals inside his own home by family members and a religious figure. Court documents revealed that the child was accused of harboring demons because of behavioral issues and emotional outbursts. During rituals, he was restrained, struck, and forced to endure prolonged prayer sessions late into the night. Neighbors reported hearing screams but were told it was religious counseling. The child died from blunt force trauma combined with exhaustion. This case resulted in criminal charges, psychological evaluations, and national outrage. Prosecutors emphasized that the adults involved were not ignorant or isolated. They were fully aware that the child was suffering and chose belief over intervention. A pattern that keeps repeating what links these cases is not geography or denomination. It is escalation. Each began with prayer, then shouting, then restraint, then punishment. In every investigation, authorities found the same logic repeated. Pain was interpreted as purification, resistance as proof of possession, and silence as spiritual victory. By the time children stopped crying, it was already too late. Psychologists who testified in these trials described the phenomenon as collective reinforcement, where multiple adults confirm each other's beliefs until cruelty feels righteous. In these moments, the child ceases to be a child and becomes an object, a battlefield between good and evil. The aftermath. Brazilian courts have consistently ruled that religious belief does not justify physical harm. Convictions followed, sentences were handed down, churches issued public denials, distancing themselves from the individuals involved. But the damage was done. The children were buried. The rituals stopped only after death. Final thought. There were no demons found in any of these cases. No supernatural cause of death. only bruises, broken tissue, dehydration, and fear. These were not ancient rituals. They were not tribal customs. They were not misunderstood traditions. They were modern deliverance rituals performed by adults who believed suffering was holy, and that belief killed children.